Good evening, everyone. We trust you're doing well. Welcome to another episode of Real Talk Family Life, building shatterproof families one brick at a time. So we're ending Q3 of 2023. Third quarter, we're rounding the bend. Christmas is near. For those of you who would have celebrated independence, I'm sure you're already dusting off the decorations and the Christmas trees in celebration of Christ's birth. But today we want to go with a focus on values. That's our topic to wrap up this quarter. And in this episode, we hope to re-engineer our perspective on what builds strong individuals and even stronger families. Our conversation will examine definitions of values, what we see as the case compared to what ought to be the case, and whether some values are more valued than others. So we encourage you to take notes, use the chat feature to see clarity on any aspect of the discussion so that we might address your queries or concerns. At the end of the program, we hope that we are a bit more resolved in having godly values guide us as we navigate this life and prepare for eternity. I want to take this opportunity to welcome Pastors Anthony Henry and Roger Samuel. I'll ask you to take 30 seconds, say goodnight to our participants this evening, and then we'll jump right into the discussion. I'm going to go with Dr. Samuel, Reverend Dr. Roger Samuel first, so that he can get his jitters out the way. And then we'll go to the more experienced veteran. Note I'm not using age, Dr. Samuel, the experienced veteran.
There you go.
Anthony Henry, to say hello.
Well, good evening. It's a joy to be here. I am so pleased to be part of this program because I recognize how beneficial it is, not just to the listener, but also to myself, because I learned so much. My life has been greatly impacted by this program tremendously. And it's always a joy to be able to facilitate and to share. And I'm looking forward to this evening discussion. And I know my esteemed colleague, if I could use that, because he's in the higher realms, I appreciate so much that he has to offer. So I'm also looking forward to this dynamic conversation this evening.
Good evening, everyone. It's good to be here with you. It's nice to take accolades that you do not deserve. It's a pleasure, and we have a very interesting subject this evening. I trust that it would bless our hearts as we interact with each other, and hope that you will be blessed from it. Thank you, Dr. Sullivan.
Thank you, Pastor Henry. I also want to acknowledge Dr. Patricia Neff, who's joining us this evening. Dr. Neff, welcome. I see great minds think alike. All of us are in shades of gray, black, and white. That is lovely. I don't know if it has anything to do with the fact that Trinidad and Tobago just celebrated independence and, we're trying to be professional but still represent. But be that as it may, let's jump into what values are. So I did some digging on the internet, nothing too deep, don't worry. And I found my favorite band is Nike. And I was looking at their core values, and the article said Nike's core values include inspiration, innovation, every athlete in the world authentic, connected, and distinctive. These values define what Nike holds dear in its quest to become the best. The mission drives them to do everything possible to expand human potential. They do that by creating groundbreaking sport innovations, by making our products more sustainable, building creative and diverse global teams, and making a positive impact in the communities where they live and work. They have a clear mission. And then I looked at Adidas, Nike's, what we like to say in the sports world, enemy, and their values: courage, ownership, innovation, team play, integrity, and respect, tied to their culture and the essence of their identity. Their values offer clarity on essential behaviors and mindsets that they value in their colleagues and represent the attitude they want to see in each other. Their mission, similar to Nike, to be the best sports brand in the world. Every day they come to work to create and sell the best sports products and to offer the best service and consumer experience. and to do all that in a sustainable way. And so that jumps into our first question, pastors, because I found this was so telling that here are these two global brands having a clear idea of what they are here for, what they aim to achieve, what their mission is. And I felt like some of us don't actually know what our purpose is or what we're purposed to do. And the fact that they had guiding principles like values, I wonder, what are values and why is it important for us to have it? And so, Pastor Henry, I'm going to allow you the opportunity to start the discussion. What are values? What are we talking about?
So when we think of values, we are thinking, especially in the terms of principles, we are talking about a moral or a social principle that is accepted by an individual or a group of individuals, let's say society. And somehow out of that, it tells you, it decides what is best, what is good and desirable or important. So that they're basically sometimes they're basically unconscious motivators at times, but they fuel our emotions, our feelings, our thoughts, and sometimes our behavior, so that we have an understanding of how we have this internal understanding of what is valuable to us, what we consider to be right and wrong. And so, excuse me, we tend to make decisions based on them, to use them as our motivating factor. For some people, they have defined what those things are and how important they are, and yet some other people just function because they know this is what they're supposed to do. They have never taken the time to understand some of these subconscious motives and behaviors that are probably formed, through association and through relationships. If you give me just 1 minute, I could probably explain just a little bit more. So that depends on where you depends on the type of friends you have, the community that you have. You develop certain values. Let's say the guy who is on the block, to him, his life may not be as he may not see his life as being valuable as much as making some money and living a particular type of lifestyle. And I think there was some statement I read somewhere ago where one of those rap artists talk about in expressing his value, that to him he would rather die trying to get rich. I think that was the expression that I got. I can't remember the statement in its entirety, but he would rather die trying to get rich than remaining poor. So that, people develop all of these consciousness, sometimes without paying attention, and it's just something that is forced upon them based on where they live and who they are associated with, and they live by those standards. But that's their values. But there are those who make conscientious efforts, and all of us as Christians should make conscientious efforts to identify what our values are in order to live the life that we think is best.
Okay. So, Pastor Samuel, I'm going to ask you to jump in here.
Yeah, and I like the fact that it also serves as a guidance to human behavior. So we feel a sense of how our behavior can be guided, how we can, conduct ourselves with respect to relationships and life on a whole, how we treat with other people. So, having those values, those core beliefs, it gives us a greater sense of stability, I think. So it's really good when you can identify and you can recognize your own values as a person, and what should be your values, and knowing how the kind of stability it brings into your life and the confidence it gives you.
Okay. I want to ask the listening community tonight, if you are able, can you just type in, if you were to think about the top 3 values you think you have? It doesn't have to, for those of you who have it established and can type it in, fantastic. But can you just drop in the chat what you think your top 3 values are and what guides you? For those of you who haven't, if you would just take 2 minutes and think about it, what do you think guides you as you go through this life? And we're hoping that by the end of this program, at least we'd have a better understanding of what we hold dear. You know, it's okay to have 100 values, but at the end of the day, there's some core ones that you think no matter what, I'm going to stick with these, whether it be integrity, honesty, kindness, etc. So, pastors, I want to thank you for the general definition, but because we're building shatterproof Christian families, I want to go, if you would permit me to jump to that verse in the Bible, Galatians 5, 22 to 26. Would you say that the fruit of the Spirit can be considered values for the Christian community? Is that the biblical guidance for those of us who might be saying, well, I never actually thought about values and what guides me? I kind of know you shouldn't lie. I know the 10 Commandments. You know, I try to treat my neighbors, I treat myself, I try to love my wife as Christ loved the church. Would you say Galatians 5, love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control, against such there is no law? You know, we learn it in primary school, we know the song, the fruits of the Spirit are these akin to values that we should hold as Christians?
I think so, because the Holy Spirit, of course, when we accept Christ as our Lord and Savior, the Holy Spirit indwells our human spirit and cause our human spirit to bear these qualities that are sustainable. And through those qualities, we're able to love right, treat each other right. So I think they can be classified and looked upon as guiding factors, because it kind of demonstrates and illustrates the characteristics of God, because these are some of the things that we see embodied in the whole nature of God. And as we are guided by them, we are able to display to humanity and give them a sense of who God is in us, not just in terms of how we preach and teach, but our general behavior. And those things are really exemplified in our behavior. And when we can demonstrate those traits, I think people have a sense of what our values are, because it teaches how to treat people right, how to relate it to people from that place. That's because, I mean, ordinarily we struggle to do right. We struggle because we have so many situations where we feel justified as to why we should get even and where we should lash out. But with those qualities, we have something to guide us and to control and to think through how we should relate. So I think, you know, embracing and being guided by those, by the fruit of the Spirit, is definitely a way of showing and can be useful and looked upon as values. In my opinion, yes.
So I am not going to minimize, I don't want to make it sound as though I minimize the work of the Spirit in discussing this whole idea of values. But, you know, just as you said, the fruit of the Spirit, love, joy, peace, and so on. But what does the person truly understand about love? Mind you, he's come into the church from a background where, you know, he has been in a society where love is about sexual activities and what have you and so on. And he comes into the church and you tell him the fruit of the Spirit is love. And he's going to, does he understand the full concept of the value of love? How much is he willing to give up to now, after you have explained what love is and the sacrifice that is required in order to love, how much are you going to value that above yourself, above your feelings and your desires in order to love? self-control or any of the others? How much are you willing to give up? That's where the value comes in. How much are you willing to put out? How much are you willing to expend in order to display this particular character trait that you call love or joy or gentleness? And so the value is not just something that you are talking about. It's not just something that you think that is going to supernaturally come upon you. Right. It is how much you yourself invest in wanting to have this trait or this principle or this virtue to be a part of your life. How much are you willing to make that a part of you? So when we think of values, we are not just thinking about some of these fancy words that we talk about and that we would like to achieve. We are thinking about how much we value the value, if I could put it that way. It's how much we are willing to put out on the value. For example, the guy who is having problems with his temper, and he wants to he wants to learn forgiveness and self-control. How much value does he put on that? If he doesn't put any value, and every time he gets into an issue, he loses his control, it's because it is not a value for him. He doesn't put any personal value to him. The guy who been accustomed running around and what have you and so on, he gets married, probably never thought about loyalty as being a value. Yeah. He's still influenced by the Jean and Dinah, Rosita and Clementine, and the Sangre Grande tonight, and the Village Ram, and all of. He's still influenced by that, but he is in the church, so he hasn't learned as yet what the value of loyalty is all about. The value of being faithful and trustworthy, and all of these different things. And it's not just learning them and memorizing them as a value. It is how much I am willing to expend in order to achieve them.
I remember when I was a younger Christian, and one of the girls, because we were very close to our pastor, one of the girls carry some story to our pastors that I would have shared some words but talk about them, which of course was not true. And I thought I understood love because I mean, in that environment, I think one Sunday when I felt this overwhelming sense of love, and I thought, yeah, this is it. This is really what love is about. And I felt so good and so encouraged until I had that experience. Right. With her going and telling them these bad things that I supposedly would have said, and they believed, and that created a drama. So I walked away feeling like something in my heart was not sitting right, because what I thought I understood love, I thought I felt love. At least that Sunday I did, but that Monday I didn't. Yeah. And I had to learn then. And I felt like walking away. I felt like giving up, because something about that was not just. But praying and reading, I recognized in the word something was mirrored, something was suggested that I should follow through on. And I began to really desire and reach for this and pray that I will change and have a different perspective, But initially, when I was praying for that girl, I wasn't praying nice prayer because I was very upset. But eventually, I think as time rolled on, I kept praying for her, and I kept thinking about it, and I kept reading the word, and in that process, Pastor Henry and Dr. Sullivan, I recognize, like you said, I had to want, I had to value, I had to recognize it take effort, it take time. It took me denying how I felt and embracing this other way of doing things. As a result of that, eventually my whole heart turned around. I was able to pray nicer prayers for the girl. I was able to embrace her and talk with her. So I understand and I see what you're saying. because oftentimes we walk away thinking this emotion and this feeling is it, but how much do we value this? That we will like invest and reach and really apply, because that is where we begin to see the change. We think we are changed because we feel the emotions, but it's only when we are confronted with the reality of that, and then we are required to then press in. So I had that experience that really helped me to kind of appreciate what you were describing just now. Yeah, it was painful, but I learned, and I'm still learning, and I'm recognizing I have to then want that and value that, and and desire that type of life and change, as opposed to how I felt and what I think I should do as a result of that.
Sorry, go ahead, Pastor Henry. No.
Yes, so let me just add there, because you find that, people talk about values. I value my health, right? That's a typical example. I value my health.
Yeah.
But every Fridays, it's the French fries, it's this, the other, and what have you. And then you get to the doctor, and the doctor says, listen, this thing has affected your heart. It's going to, I don't think you have a lot of time. And then you realize, the person then realized how valuable health was or is. And if you had asked them when they were doing all of those things, they would tell you, yes, health is valuable. I don't have time for exercise. I don't have time for this. I don't have time for the other. But the moment that you're really sick, and you're really, put in a position where, you don't have a lot of time to live, then you realize, how much life is worth, how much valuable health really is. And it's then that you are willing to put in the work in order to get better, or in order to maintain good health. And so values are like that. We can tell ourselves, it is good to do this. It is all right to do this. But if we are not putting in the work to ensure that we live up to the standard, we live up to the virtue, then that thing is not valuable in your eyes. You do not see it as a value. So value demands that if we see something as a value, or we cherish a virtue as a value, we have to put in the work to attain it and to achieve it.
Yeah. So I'm hearing values-based thoughts, but values-informed actions.
Yeah.
And it's almost like Pastor Henry's putting us on the spot.
I think so.
Reverend Dr. Samuel,
I
we
think so.
value health, but French fries on a Friday night. I think he came tonight with some weapons in his armory, and we're not liking it.
I think I'm feeling convicted already.
Yes, yes. So I see some persons did put their values in. So respect, integrity, empathy, fairness, love, respect for myself and others, patience, loyalty, kindness. And we have a question. Are our core values applied in all situations, or are they applied sporadically or in specific situations only? And I'm coming to Pastor Henry first, because I'm sure there is an example of core values.
So just go back at it again for me, please, because I have a thought on it, but I was trying to think it through.
So are our core values applied in all situations, or are they applied sporadically or in specific situations only?
No. So first of all, the core values are those that you have set for yourself. All right, so that you have identified them. And when you have identified those values have a sort of a transformative capacity or power to change your inner world, your understanding of your inner thoughts and feelings, and how you make sense of the environment of people and social events. So basically, you do not shape your values shape you for better or for worse. And so, you seek to improve your life. And once you have established those values, you live by them, right? There may be a value that is of greater significance than the other. So bear with me here, because I think I'm going to give an example again. So that Stealing, well, I shouldn't say honesty. Honesty for me is a value.
Yeah.
And that honesty, as far as I'm concerned, it means that I should not steal anything that anyone has. Okay, I shouldn't take anything from anyone without their permission. But I am driving, I'm walking along the street, and somebody is knocked down. And it's today's society, you have scores of people who are there looking on, and everybody is concentrating on taking the camera on the movie in order to get it on Facebook or wherever. I am concerned about the person who is on the ground, because that's a life that is concerned. So I called the paramedics and they said, listen, we don't have any vehicles available. Try to get the person to the A&E unit. I don't have a vehicle, but there is a car that is there with the key in it. And I know if I ask the person for the vehicle, they're going to refuse because they don't want all that blood in the vehicle. So I am going to jump in the car. I'm going to steal the car. I'm going to get the person in the vehicle, and I'm going to take them to the A&E unit. So you ask me, do I value honesty? Yes, I do. But in this case, I value a life more than being honest, than not stealing.
Right.
And so it depends on how you see your values. So there are times when you have a higher value, and that higher value would take precedence over a lower value.
Is that what we consider, Pastor Henry, then when we say doing what is right versus doing the right thing?
I'm not quite acquainted with the
Like
but
doing
yes,
what is
I
right.
think it can apply.
Yeah, like you'd say to do what is right means you follow the rules all the time. So you should ask that person, they'll say no, and then the person dies. Or you've done what is right. But
Yeah.
doing the right thing would be to save the life, regardless
person,
of the
yes.
repercussions that come to
Yes.
you after.
Yes.
Okay.
But I
so-
still believe in honesty.
Right.
I still would not steal a car for my own pleasure and my own purpose.
Mhm.
But to save the life of a person, yes, I would steal a car.
Okay. So I want to segue into, and I think we basically answered the other question, the importance of setting personal values. But I want us to kind of reinforce the point, right? I think earlier we said that values were basic and fundamental beliefs that guide or motivate our attitudes and our actions as we go through life. And you gave some examples of why not having values might be detrimental. So can we just, if you were to say one thing about the importance of personal values at the individual level, why that is important before we even consider relationships, whether that's familiar relationships or personal relationships or job relationships, why it is important having individual values. So we'll speak to that, and then I see another question in the chat. Reverend Samuel, you want to go at that one?
I think because it gives us a greater sense of confidence, and as our value increases, I mean, we have a sense of stability, and we are able to have a greater sense of what's right and wrong for our lives, and we are guided in terms of our behavior and how we think, how we act, how we live. So I think personally, I mean, for example, there's a scripture in Micah that talks about do what's right, love mercy, and walk humbly before your God. And so on my personal mission, my personal life, I think, ascribing to that, having that personal sense of knowing this is how I want to conduct my life for my own stability, for my own confidence, for my own satisfaction of knowing that I'm guided in a way that helps me to bring honor to God and not just happy about my own decisions. But even in making good decisions, I know God is glorified in those things. So first of all, I'm doing what's right to ensure before God, I'm honoring him in my life and my decisions. So I think it's important for me. It gives me a greater sense of stability and confidence in knowing that I am pleasing God in my actions before I'm satisfied with my own decisions.
I want to ask Pastor Henry or even Dr. Neff if you want to add.
Yes. So I'm going to yield to Dr. Neff at the moment. Okay.
You're muted.
Just refresh my mind on the question again, specifically. I have something to share, but I wanted to make sure it's in alignment.
Yeah, no problem. The idea of the importance of setting values at the individual level and not just, being before we even think about group values or company values or relational values.
I think it's important for individuals to set values because values are very important in life. Mainly because they influence our behavior, they influence our personality, our attitudes, our thoughts, and our decision-making. And when I reflect on the example that Pastor Henry just shared, that was a decision that was made based on his values, the value of honesty, and making a decision to yield to the higher value of respect for a person's life and empathy than being concerned about honesty, because honesty could be corrected. You can certainly pay the gentleman to fix his car, clean his car, or, give him gas or whatever. But the person's life, when it's life or death, that's something that can't easily be corrected. I believe that our values have a purpose in life, in our lives, because they guide our actions. And because they do guide our actions, they have to be in alignment with our beliefs. So our values have to be aligned with our beliefs because then they guide our actions. So they kind of all work together. We cannot have a value that is totally the opposite of our personal beliefs. It doesn't work that way. You can't value honesty when you're a thief, right? And that simplifies it, right? But your values have to align with your beliefs. And once they are aligned, they do help to guide our actions, behaviors, personality, attitude, and definitely our thoughts and decision-making.
Thank you. So Pastor Henry.
Yeah, so one of the things, you want to know who you are as an individual, set your values.
Right.
Personal values will define who you are, and they would also define what you want to be. And personal values would help you to make point you in the right direction when there are difficult decisions to make. So that when you are put between, when you are given choices and somehow it's like Abraham, whether to obey God and offer up the son, your values determine which one you are going to do. And I have discovered that unhappiness in life, this is sort of on the negative side, but unhappiness in life, they come from two basic sources. One, when you do not have a system by which you value your own life, you are unhappy. And two, when you have a value system, but you do not live by that value system, you enter a phase that is called dissonance, so that you have a set of beliefs that you want to live by, but you somehow fall below the standard. You enter this stage of internal conflict. And so personal values also can be goals that one would want to achieve in time. Right, so that it's not just what you are doing. You probably can go for the high bar, raise the bar to the highest and say, I'm going to work towards achieving this because this is what I want to be. So you look at the fruit of the spirit, you choose one of them and you know you're not there. you're losing your temper on every occasion, and you want to develop self-control. Well, you can say, I will be, and you make a decision that you are going to master yourself, you are going to be in control of yourself, and then you work hard towards achieving it. So that it not just become a thought and something that you want to achieve, but after a while you're able to achieve it. It becomes very your value.
Yeah. And I think it's important as well, Pastor Henry, that we warn Christians, right? When you pray for stuff, God will answer your prayer. You pray for patience, and God will put you in positions to execute it. So unless you were serious about the transformation and the change that all three of our panelists has just spoken about, be careful the prayers you pray. We're encouraging you to pray it, but just know, when the challenge and the decision making comes, it's not because the devil is at work in your life, it's because you've prayed a prayer to God and he's walking you through the test. As Pastor Samuel said, we're getting convicted with every statement in this. I'm here making notes. We have another question. Go ahead, Pastor Samuel. No, go ahead.
I was just being naughty. I was just saying, Pastor, and he's just using this for us to start, shaping our own personal values. I think he's deliberately helping us and the panel, which is good.
I think so. He's like growth to this team.
It's been a long life of making, Pastor Samuel. When you get to my age, you would have the privilege to look back and see.
So we have another question. Will you say that smuggling, we have two questions. Will you say that smuggling Bibles in a communist country is being honest? I think it depends on the value of the person smuggling the Bibles, but Pastor Henry, over to you.
Yeah, you answer the question. It depends on the value that the person. It depends on it's a personal value. And so if risking your life to get the Bible into a communist country, you value that more than your life, you value that more than anything else, then that's what you have chosen to do. You have chosen to break the law in order to get the word of God out. And that's how you see it. And so I respect that. I am not sure if I am sent to some part of the world that is communist, like when I had to go to China, I had to sign a declaration that I will not engage in preaching or anything like that. I signed the declaration because I wanted to get there. It was a part of my job going there. And so I could not have gone there and done otherwise, because that now would be dishonest. So if it's given to me to do, that's to me personally. There's those who may say, well, I'm going to sign it, but when I get there, it's more valuable for the person who is going to get saved. That's your value. And we must understand that people's value systems differ, right? I tried, I'm not sure if I explained it fully at the beginning. The guy who is carrying the guns and shooting people and so on, that he has his own value system that has been formed by the community in which he lived. That is his value. He sees himself as being a good person the more ghosts he has. And for those who don't understand the term, it means the more people that he killed. Right, so that he values killing people. It is his value system. Our business as Christian is saving lives, so that when somebody give their lives to Christ through the ministry or what we do, we feel vindicated. We feel as though we are of worth because we did what we choose to. Right, so we have to understand that, so that people's value systems would be different. Even among us as Christians, we have varying value systems.
So there's a comment and a question. Having good values also requires having a correct priority structure. It requires making the choice to arrange our decisions, practices, and lifestyles to honor God first. And the question, I value the happiness of my family. I therefore would steal to make my family happy. How would you describe my values here?
Again, it's your personal, it's your personal value. So that if I steal to make my family happy, I would be troubled inside that I did something wrong. Okay? Because I think that the honesty is a higher value to me than making my family happy. Right, so I'm not going to pick up the $1,000 sneaker somewhere or the other because my son wanted $1,000 sneaker and he doesn't want to go to school with the $100 sneaker that I could get him from Charlotte Street. He wants this big, so I'm not going to do that because it's not my value system.
And I guess down to Pastor Henry, there are consequences to those type of decisions.
Right. You know, so.
What I found, not found, but what is interesting about this discussion, Pastor, you're talking about the gang leader. I don't know if anybody watches The Good Wife. I used to watch it at one point in time, and there was this gangster that was, you know, set to go to trial, etc. But he made provisions for his son to go to the best schools, etc. And so, you know, I think this segues really good into collective value systems, because he was already a part of this gang where there was a particular type of order, but he wanted what he perceived as better for his son, values like honesty, etc. And so, you know, I want to segue into the importance of setting family values collectively, but then if we can just touch a bit on when our personal values sometimes conflicts with work values or societal values. So what is the importance of setting family values? I want to, Dr. Neff, if you want to take that, then I'll come to Dr. Samuel.
I was trying to remember where the scripture comes from, but it's a well-known scripture, you know, as for me and my house, we will. To me, that's an example of a family value, you know, where the head of the home is saying that as a family, as a unit, we will serve the Lord. That's what we're choosing to do. That's what we value. That's what we're going to work towards doing. Family values are important because they help to guide the entire structure of the family, and they help the family to work in concert as a unit. Not that the family would be perfect, not that there would not be conflict or issues, or maybe even conflicting personal values. But when the family together come together and create values for the family, and they make that commitment or decision to live by the family creed, the family value, it does add a lot of strength to that family. It strengthens the family, it strengthens the relationship with God, as long as, of course, that value aligns with God. Going back to that scripture. But it's important for the family to do that, because it really does help to set the stage and lay the foundation for family unity and family strength. And because family contribute to our personal values, when you establish family values very early in life, it'll help shape those personal values. So I think it's very important for us to establish those values, establish it early, so that it'll help lay the foundation for the personal values, so that then there would be very little room for conflict or dissonance with the individual as they begin to grow and mature spiritually.
And I think too, as we form those family values, in a moment of uncertainty and you know, you're guided and you have somebody to help you make proper decisions, because sometimes, you know, we feel uncertain about life, or maybe our family agree that this is the way we're going to live. And then there's a neighbor's child who wants to do something else, and your child say, why can't we do like the neighbor next door? And you say, well, you know, this is how we as a family decide to live. These are the values we are living by. Therefore, we are not going to do as the neighbor next door. But why can't I? Because this is how we. And so then we realize the collective value takes priority over the individual interests. At that point, to ensure we follow through. As for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. Even if we want to use Psalms 1, blessed is the man who walketh not in the counsel of the ungodly, nor standing, you position yourself never to live according to, the counsel of the wicked, how they go about living their lives, how they go about making their decisions, how they go about making their money, how they earn their income. We are going to be honest, we're going to work hard, we are going to discipline ourselves. So I think those things are very important to give families a sense of direction and stability, because there are other influences that they're going to be exposed to that will try to, cause them to go astray, and they can fall back on those values, on those guidance to encourage them in moments of uncertainties.
Yeah, so my take on this is that when two people are coming together to start a family, they both have values. And remember what I just said, that values can be different.
Yeah.
And so what I value may not necessarily be what my partner values. And so one of the things that I do in the premarital counseling class is that you must define that personal mission statement, the family mission statement, and you must define your personal values and your family values. You must do that before you get married. And so it's very, very important, because some of the things that, let me say that, there are things that people would value that others wouldn't, and the things that you would value are not necessarily scriptural, unscriptural. Right, so you have the wife who believes that cleanliness is next to godliness, and so everything must be spick and span, and what that's her value system. Is it going to be the family value system? You need to decide on that before you get married, because if you don't, that shoe by the door or wherever it's dropped, it's going to cause confusion. It's a value. It's what you value. It is what I value. My clean house, I value. And you can't just walk in here with your shoe without wiping at that. So it's important that you develop. See somebody put on the chat. Yes. So it's important before marriage that you develop what those values are going to be for the family, right? I knew that as a little child growing up. I heard it so many times that Henrys do not go to jail. But that was a value. That was a value as far as the family was concerned. Now, we are not supposed to do anything that is illegal to go to prison. So you could skirt around as far as much as possible. You don't get caught, you're not going to jail. But that's what they taught us, right? So that you need to do that, you need to develop those values as your family values, because they're guiding principles that inform you and your family how to make decisions and live your lives. They outline what is important to your family and what you are striving to achieve. Right? And every family should have core values, whether they're articulated or not, whether they're written out or not, they should be articulated. And these values should be clear through the way families behave at home, how they interact with their community, and how parents raise their children. And so by clearly defining your family values, you will have a stronger, healthier relationship with your relatives, that's your wife and your children, and it will set your children up for success. Family values should serve as guiding principles that inform how you and your family make decisions and live your lives. And they should outline what is important to your family and what you are all striving towards, so that it is important that even before you set the date for the wedding, that you have these family values in place. And if you are struggling about those values before you get married, tell the person to, if you can't agree and accept the person's values, and somehow the person can't accept yours, the rhetorical question, I think, is Joel asked it, And if it could be answered yes, then you get married. If not, then just be friends. Can two walk together except they be agreed? And if the answer to that is no, be friends. You're going to be better off for it. Don't get married.
Pastor Henry, you see that right there? That is major. Because I think a lot of families today, people make decisions based on emotions, how they feel, and they make lifelong decisions without taking into consideration what you've just described, only to discover as they journey it together, their value conflicts, and it starts a fight. And it's drama all the way. And I think people need to be aware of what you just said, need to be repeated over and over and over, because even though we all go to church and we all claim to have similar values, we differ in so many areas, even as it relates to just where the toothpaste is folded, how the toilet paper is wrapped, where the clothes are dropped, and all those little things that seem insignificant slowly corrode seemingly very powerful marriages and families. So I think what you said there need to be reiterated over and over, especially for those who are not yet married. You must understand, yes, you feel the goosebumps, yes, you feel the butterfly, yes, the emotions are high, but consider these things first.
Yeah.
But these are the things that can make or break your family.
Yeah, and I want to.
Don't share that kiss until you sit down and discuss the value statement.
Hey, Robo.
Yeah, I was just gonna add to Dr.
Yeah,
Samuel's statement.
I love that you said that, Pastor Henry, because, sometimes couples, talking about couples contemplating marriage, they may see certain things that they don't particularly like or care for, but the goosebumps are there, the butterflies are there, the kiss has been shared, and they think, oh, I could overlook this. I'll learn to live with it. But as they begin living the married life and get settled in the married life, those little things tend to gnaw at you, and they tend to become, like Pastor Simon said, they tend to erode the relationship. Those are the things you said, well, I can overlook that. I'll learn to live with that. I'll get over it. Well, you can't. So you're right. Let's have those conversations before we get into the married life and realize that it's not as easily overlooked as we thought it might be.
Yeah. So we have two more questions. First one, are values always good from society's perspective? Are values always good?
But remember, there are societal values too, right? So I think when one of the values that we need to develop as Christians is the one that is called respect.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily agree with your values, but I respect you for your values.
There you go. There you go.
Right. So that when we get into talking about some of the other values, that is one that you want to hold dearly, so that society may not be right, but then why am I am not God. And God does not, God respects society.
Yeah.
He doesn't come down. I mean, if he didn't respect society, all the wrong things that people do, he would cut them off as soon before they start. He would cut them off.
Yeah.
Right. So he respects you. He gives you time to do what you want, and he has set a principle in nature that works all the time. Whatever you plant, you are going to reap, and much more.
Yeah.
So if you hold a particular value system that is contrary to what I think God respects and subscribes to and what he wants us to adhere to, go right ahead. You are going to pay somewhere along the road, and you're going to reap what you sow.
So next question. What do you do when your personal value contradicts that of your boss or spouse, who may require you to do something that contradicts your personal value, a value that they know you have? What do you do when your personal value contradicts that of your boss or your spouse, who may require you to do something that contradicts your personal value, a value they know you have? I'm not going to pick on anyone.
I wonder if
Definitely.
Pastor Henry's statement just now gives life to that
Mhm.
idea of respect, because there's some things you may not have the power to change, but you may have to work with. And so sometimes in life, on a job or a spouse, there are things that we don't have the power to change. We have to see what we have the power to control and what we don't have the power over, because some things we have no control over a certain person's behavior, but we do have control over our own. So I think it's looking at those two dynamics and finding a way to work around that. But I'll let Pastor Henry, I just skirted along a little bit, setting the stage for him to bring on the real revelation. Yeah.
Yeah, and that one is easy. There are times when you have to say, like the Calypsonian, you keep your money, I will keep my honey and die with my dignity.
Like we have some modern apostles, quote unquote, that we're that we're quoting tonight.
Apparently, we have to be up to date with some new sounds.
Yeah, I think Pastor Henry is preparing for his second career as a comedian.
I think he is prepared.
No, but I'm serious. I am serious. I mean, you have some of these bosses that, I mean, from what the question is saying, they want you to do things that are contrary to your beliefs.
Yeah.
Well, keep your money, keep your job. I would die with my dignity. It's beyond me to bring myself to that level. I'm not getting there. So, you know, I'm not even going to give you the opportunity to fire me. Here's my resignation.
Yeah. I think was, oh, go ahead, Pastor Samuel.
I was going to say, that's one side of the question. Yeah. But then you talk about spouse. How do you address that, Pastor Henry?
Yeah.
Can't die with that. They can't keep the honey, Pastor. You have to work with that one.
Wait, just now, the spouse, or so the boss or the spouse.
The boss or spouse.
I was thinking about the boss, the spouse. When you see again, that is why it is important to have you. Don't give the spouse a kiss before you settle on the value statement.
There you go.
What if you already settled on a value statement and then
And
you
it
realize,
changes.
yeah, that this is actually, maybe perhaps you agreed on what the value system was at the point of marital counseling, but as you start living, you realize, okay, maybe they didn't understand. You know, in the beginning, you spoke about people saying, I value honesty, etc. But when it's time to walk it out, they don't understand that you have to walk out the value. What
Then
happens if in marriage?
Let us go back to the drawing board with the values again.
Back to
Okay.
counseling. Go back to
Yes.
counseling.
Let us go back to the drawing board and so that it is not a war, it is now both of us talking, and it's not necessarily a compromise, but we are trying to seek a win-win situation here. So I'm not giving up everything. I know that I'm going to have to allow you to have a win in order for me to have a win, because the relationship is already sealed. It's a spouse. It's a, you know, we're in this for life. And so it's not a matter of walking out and walking away. We need to find a win-win situation here to make sure this relationship works.
Yeah, perfect. See,
I hope, yeah. Pastor Samuel, you're going to say something? Sorry.
no, I was just saying. See, here you have the goods. I'm telling you.
Yes, I hope that answers the questions. If it doesn't, feel free to seek clarity in the chat again. 2 more questions. To what extent does the Bible impact values of the Christian? To what extent does the Bible impact the values of a Christian? And are values static or permanent, or do they, I'm assuming the follow-up to that is, or do they change over time?
I would say, if I may,
Yes.
Christian values does not change or never change over time. Christian values it should remain the same with respect to what God expects of us. What God expects of us never change over time. It is from generation to generation, the same expectations are the same, and the Bible should impact, well, the principles of the word should greatly impact our values and should help shape our values as well, because just as the code of ethics or standards or principles that we live by that we deem as important as an individual, then God's word becomes that principle that guides our decisions and our lifestyle. So I think the word of God should definitely impact in every way, in all ways. And the values of God never change. Over time, it does not change. It remains the same from generation to generation. That's just my take, but I'll wait for the...
And I agree that Christian values do not change. It's already written and it's already articulated in the word. But I do know that family values can change over time.
Yeah.
And especially as a family matures and become more settled, how they work out those values, how they achieve their Christian values may change over time. The family values may change over time, and it doesn't mean that they don't believe in the Christian values. They are still working towards those Christian values, but how they go about it may change over time as the family matures, as do in personal values. Our personal values also mature and change and grow and develop and so forth. And there's so many things that influence that growth and development. But I think as long as we are working towards achieving those Christian values, it's okay if those values mature and develop and grow as well.
Yeah, so I think that one of the things that we have to bear in mind is that revelation is progressive. So that the more we study the Bible, the better we get to understand the particular setting. So that as a leader, the kind of a person that I was as a young person, it's not the same. I know that I have changed in that particular area. And so that revelation changes, so that the value system has not changed. The biblical value system has not changed, but my understanding of it has changed over the years. I've come to understand more of a particular thing. And so as we grow in grace, we could expect that to happen. And so what was love as a 19-year-old is not the same, it doesn't carry the same meaning as a 79-year-old, or 75-year-old or 73-year-old, as the case may be. It doesn't carry the same meaning. It's altogether different.
And
But
forgiveness,
the principle of love remains the same.
Right.
Yeah.
right? Yeah. Pastor Annie's encouraging me to be cheeky. I'm saying unforgiveness, right? I look at 2-year-olds, it's mine, my turn. And then, as you get 19, you're like, no, but if you respect me, I'll give respect. And then as you grow older, you see people talking less, kind of observing more pensive before they speak. And then you think, oh my gosh, life goals. So I like that point, that revelation is progressive. And so if you want to measure whether or not you're growing or learning, are you still talking more than everyone else? Or are you forgiving more? Does love look different? So boy, Pastor Samuel, we said it before the program, and it's true, he's sticking some thorns out here this evening.
It's a good thing you and I had a private session prior to this session, and then we recognized that session gave Pastor Henry life to hit us under the belt. But you know what? As revelation is progressive, I'm growing, I'm learning, and I'm progressing in my understanding, and I am embracing the moment. I will be better.
Amen. We have another question. We're deviating from the script, but I think it all goes back to the outcomes that we wanted to achieve tonight. And I think it's important that we have practical examples and answers to the questions. So the next question says, how do I respect someone else's values when they do not align with mine? How do I respect someone else's values when they do not align with mine? So I guess the person is looking for a practical example of what disagreeing but respecting looks like. And I don't have that answer because when Pastor Henry made the example, was it Pastor Henry or Pastor Samuel, about the toothpaste and, you know, seat up or seat down, Pastor Neff started to laugh, I started to cackle, someone put up the smiley face. And so, you know, those are simple, but again, they can erode what you think is something big. And in progressing and in learning, you realize, oh my gosh, when we came together as a group or as a family or in business, we thought we were on the same page, but then something happens along the way that you say, okay, maybe we have to go separately. How do you leave that relationship with love? And I think it is we have a few examples of those in the Bible. Right? Do you give the person all the best cutlery and tell them, well, you go on that side of the pasture and I'll stay here? Or do you hide it and say, well, go find your own? So Pastor Henry, we're coming to you. How do I respect someone else when it doesn't align with mine?
So if we follow the teachings, we have done a lot of things to disrespect people's value system. The church on a whole is where it is because we have done that. As evangelical Christians, we have criticized in our open air services the Catholic and the Anglicans. We call the priests all kind of a name and what have you and all kind of a thing. Jesus never sent us out here to do that with people who has varying values to us. Sent us with one commission: go teach. Go teach. And if you want to teach somebody, you have to learn to understand where they're at. You diagnose where the problem is, and then you provide information that would help that person to see what they're doing is wrong and help them to be where they're supposed, where you want them to be. That's all we ask to do. Some people would not accept the teaching and we just leave them in the hands of the Lord. So that the whole idea of respect, respect doesn't mean that you agree with the person. I think many a times we think that if I have to respect that person has to come and understand and accept what I'm saying, then that is disrespect. That is disrespect. So that respect is understanding where the person is at. And at the same time, you understand where you are. You have enough confidence. You have enough confidence in your value and in your belief in what you hold dear. You have enough confidence. And the reason why sometimes we take at other people who have varying views and value systems is because we're not sure about our own value system. And so we have to defend ours with all our might and to make people believe that we are right. Just teach. And we teach with our words and we teach by modeling what we teach.
Perfect. Perfect answer.
Yeah. All right. Someone says, let me just acknowledge Pastor Griffith, who's on the call with us this evening. He says, for that righteous man, living among them day after day, was tormented in his righteous soul by the lawless deeds he saw and heard. Food for thought. So Pastor Griffith, you can feel free to open your mic at any point in time and expand. For that righteous man, living among them day after day, was tormented in his righteous soul by the lawless deeds he saw and heard. Yeah, but Pastor Henry tells us we go teach in our words and by our modeling.
Yeah, good night. I just saw that in there, given the previous question, how do I respect someone's value or values when it comes and does not line up with me? This was referred to law, and I was asking whether it is possible for me to be comfortable when I'm living among people whose values really contradict mine. That's the point I'm trying to raise there, really.
But can I say, because I mean, when the Bible says, let your light so shine before men that they would see your good works and glorify the Father which is in heaven, I think light was meant to have an impact on darkness. But light can only impact darkness if light is in or where the darkness exists. And sometimes we have to exist in a space where it is not exactly what we prefer, but it's meant to bring godly influence.
That's right.
And somehow bringing godly influence into places where it's not always convenient or it's not always in alignment with what we believe. But hopefully, as we teach, like was suggested, by modeling, the light will shine, an example will be given, and people will see a way forward without us disrespecting or disregarding their values. Yeah. So I feel, light shining, because you can never escape, because in our own families, we have people who are not in alignment with what we believe, and we have to live among them. On our jobs, even in our very churches, there are people who are not fully in alignment with what is teaching. And so we have to influence people from wherever we are and bring that light, bring that example to wherever they are. So hopefully they will see the good works and glorify Father. And I believe we were meant to bring godly influence wherever we go. And He's commissioned us to go and let that light shine wherever we go.
Yeah, and we need to be careful that our righteous indignation does not turn to hatred.
Yeah.
I listened to a sermon recently, a part of a sermon recently by a preacher in Texas, where he is calling on the government of the United States to pass a law that would criminalize homosexuality. And the penalty for homosexuality is to line up every homosexual and shoot them in the back of their heads. That was the language that came from the pulpit. And so that to me is hate. That to me contradicts the message of Jesus, for God so loved the world that He gave His only begotten Son, that whoever believes in Him should not perish. For God sent not His Son into the world to condemn the world, but that the world through Him might be saved.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. So we're gonna while we reflect and marinate in what was just said to the panelists, I want to ask a bit about the impact that values have on decision making. And the idea here is that the person without defined values might make bad decisions. And in so doing, I also want to ask you, are there values that might be more valuable than others? So the impact that values have on decision making, Dr. Neff, if you don't mind, I'll start with you. The person without defined values often makes bad decisions.
Well, yes, and values do have an impact on decision making because our values align with our beliefs. Therefore, our beliefs guide our actions, which guides our decision making. So there's a direct line of communication and connection between values, actions, thoughts, decision making, and so forth. That people with unclear values there's a tendency to make bad decisions. I would agree with that, because if our values are not clarified in our mind or in our actions, in our beliefs, we make decisions that not only they don't align, but they may be detrimental depending on what that decision is. And we may also be prone to making decisions on a whim or fancy, or someone may influence our decision making because we don't have a clear value. So other people, other things that are happening in society, how we feel in the moment, how we feel on that day, lots of things could influence our decision making when we do not have a clear set of values by which we live.
I think of Joseph. Joseph was in Potiphar's house, and Potiphar's wife saw him, and of course we all know the stories. And clearly he wasn't afraid of her necessarily, but she kept going after him and presenting herself. And we saw where Joseph had a clear idea of what his values were.
Yeah.
And based on that, he made a decision not to give in to Potiphar's wife's desires. He ran and left his clothes in her hands or behind. And we saw even that had consequences. Him standing up for his values, he had to then be imprisoned for what took place. But clearly he was sure of his values, and he was, insisting that he glorified God in his actions.
Yeah.
Here he was, had an opportunity to go along, and it may have worked in his favor. Yeah, but along the way, it will of course create, dishonor, and we need to understand when we make decisions that is in line with our values, and that honor our values. We are satisfied with our decision, and we're able to have some satisfaction because we have honored of our values. So I think it's important to clearly know what our values are and stand for values, and know it brings satisfaction, even if it means the consequences imprisoned. But at least we are satisfied knowing we have done what is right in terms of glorifying God, and we know we've honored the values and the principles in which we subscribe to.
Yeah, I just want to acknowledge the persons who are on YouTube as well, agreeing with what you're saying, both to all the panelists, and talking about lifelong decisions, or I would say consequences are made based on temporary emotions.
Yeah.
So thank you to those of you joining us on YouTube. Feel free to drop your questions here as well if you have it. We're wrapping up, but we can still take one or two if you have any questions there. So, Pastor Henry, are some values more valuable than others?
Yes, to the individual, what you have, what you hold as being valuable, there are some that are of greater value. The guy may, Judas. He was a nice guy. He loved money. He loved money. And he didn't have his values defined too well. And so 30 pieces of silver, somebody may not understand the value of it, but it was able to purchase a piece of land. He had given up his entire life to follow Jesus, at least his adult life. He was made the treasurer. Jesus promised that he was going to restore the kingdom, and I'm going to get a piece of that. And here it is, on this last minute, I am going away and you're not going to see me anymore. 3 years, I've worked and nothing. The woman comes to Jesus and breaks the alabaster box on him, valuable perfume. And you hear Judas, this could have been sold and given to the poor. He's dead on money. But he doesn't have a value system. He hasn't identified what loyalty is all about. And so he is easily influenced. When he catches himself, he does not know what it is to say, forgive me. And so he's weak and he kills himself, sadly. And you could see, you see definitely if he had a loyalty, if loyalty was at the core of his value, he would say, no, the money isn't worth it although I want the money, but the money isn't worth betraying my friend. You see? So ask the guy who cheats on his wife. Right. As far as he's concerned, the little fling, I love my wife. He has the value of love, but I don't intend to be caught. So he cheats. So you have to understand him from that. And he places his pleasure above his loyalty. And so it's very important that you define very clearly for yourself what your values are. So when the time comes, as Pastor Samuel said, you can act and behave like Joseph.
Mhm. And I think what we're hearing from you, Pastor Henry, and Reverend Samuel and Dr. Neff is also just as important in defining what those values are, to assign those values to different aspects of our lives. So what I value personally, what I value in family, what I value in friendship, what I value at work, what I value with my spouse, with my children. So you may have these core values, but they might prioritize differently based on individual relationship. And so I'm hearing that we should be constantly in reflection to ensure that when a test or a trial or tribulation comes, we can remain steadfast. Is that what you advise? Yeah.
Mhm.
So then the values of the Christian community. How do we define the values of Christian communities when they, oh gosh, I want to say that they are varied, but let's start from the beginning. Today, how would you advise we consider values within the Christian community or values of the Christian community? Pastor Henry, I'm going to come straight to you on that one.
Well, the thing is I think we've gone over time to Dr. We promised the folk that we're going to finish at in 1 hour. And we've gone.
Oh, it's 1 hour.
Yes. All right. So basically, and we are coming back to this in next week's program, because we said 1 hour, 1 hour for one each week. So we're going to be back here next week, God's willing. Yes. So basically the values of the Christian community, as I said, we're going to be talking about self-control next week and for the rest of the month. And then in October, we're going to be taking 1 or 2 other values and deal with them that way. But, but they're so important. And I think those that are mentioned in Galatians 5, those are if any Christian want to start with Christian values, that's a good place to start. The fruit of the Spirit: love, joy, peace, gentleness. I mean, I don't know why Paul put the first one to be love. That's the hardest one. Peter put the last one put the love to be the last one. And so you add to your faith goodness, meekness, and meekness, temperance, and so on. Peter made that scaffolding method very easy. And then he gets to the last one, brotherly kindness, and then brotherly kindness, love. So if you're going to experiment with it, use the model from Peter, First or Second Peter chapter 1, I think it is. 2 Peter 1, I think, and use that model, and it would work. It works better. Yes.
So in closing, Pastor Samuel, Dr. Neff, and then over to you, Pastor Henry.
I am so pleased and encouraged by this. And even as Paul commissioned us, he was saying, whatever you see me do, follow, mimic. And he was giving the example of, following through on the values and the principles that we see demonstrated in his walk with God. And I'm learning. I am not there yet. And I'm learning more and more, even by being part of this panel. I'm learning how, because Revelation is progressive, how we see, and Paul talked about it, we see dimly when we are in a state of immaturity, and when we are more mature, we're able to see clearly and we're able to understand better. And I would encourage every person to do everything in their power, even as Micah says, to love mercy, be humble before your God, be willing to follow through on knowing what is his requirement for us in terms of embracing values, or what should be considered as values. And so subscribing to those things will bring us personal satisfaction, but honor and glory to God.
Dr. Neff.
family values are important because they lay the foundation for the family stability, both psychologically and emotionally. These values are so important that when we are faced with family crises or we go through rough times, we automatically fall back on those values. Even when we are stressed and we're not thinking straight, when we are overwhelmed, the tendency is it's so automatic that we fall back on those family values. And that's what we want. That's why we have to establish them very early, make sure that the family, each member of the family understands what those values are, and they embrace those core values, and as a unit, practice those values and model those values, because when times get rough, we will automatically fall back on them. And once you fall back on those values, you can't go wrong. Over to you, Pastor Henry.
Thank you very much, Dr. Nev, and thank you, Dr. Sutherland. And you wanted to say something before, Dr. Sutherland?
No, just to thank everyone for joining us. I promise next week we will keep it within the hour, but I thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. I thought it was a nice segue into how we could perhaps end the year in some quiet reflection. And as we look towards 2024, how we could do better. So I really want to say, I appreciate the three panelists tonight, just, helping us walk through value systems so that we could begin to do our own interrogations of it.
Yes, and thank you very much, everyone. I see that Duncan send a special note. Nice having you guys on. So do me a favor. Next week, Saturday, we are on. Bring one person with you. A number of the pastors were supposed to be here with us. They said, we want to do this one week. And then last week, they told me, I am traveling. I'm going to be out this week. I'm going to be out next week. About 4 or 5 of them are out this week. So next week, we want to see the full crowd, fill the platform, and let us have a great session next week. So next week, God's willing, I think we're talking about self-control as a value. No, it's not there. It's
family values, negative societal behavior.
yes. So how family values deter negative societal behavior such as crime and gang-related activities. So plan to be with us next week, God's willing, as we have a great time in the presence of the Lord again. Have a good night, everyone, and the Lord bless you richly. Thanks for joining us.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night. You could you can unmute your mic and you can turn on your camera if you wish.
Stop the YouTube recording first.
Yes.
And thanks to everyone.